Daily Ticker, as always, brought to you by our great friends at Pelican Brewing. 4 locations along the Oregon coast. Fly over to a Pelican location. Enjoy epic views, local brews all year long. Pelican Brewing looks forward to seeing you at the coast. Joe Freeman is our guest, our good friend, covering Beaver Baseball for the Oregonian and Oregon Live. You can follow him on Twitter at Blazer Freeman. Good morning, Joe. How are you today?
Man, I'm doing great. How are y'all living?
We're doing okay. We enjoyed the little moan there as we started the segment. I want to ask you before we dive into
You got to clear the throat, man. It's early in the day. You got to kind of clear it out.
We do. He is one of our.
There we go.
There you go. He's ready to go.
One of our few West Coast guests that'll get up and do a radio show with us. We were talking about the NFL player reviews of teams, and they complain about, oh, my airplane seat is too small or the Wi-Fi is bad. What is the worst travel moment you've had as a sports writer?
Oh, God.
That you got off the plane and you contemplated doing that job ever again?
I'm quitting. I'm done.
The list is so extensive. It's so deep. It's so long. I can't even single it out. Traveling brings out the worst and like the most clueless in human beings. Like it's remarkable the things you see on planes, on rental car shuttles. I don't know what happened. It's like people lose their minds. Like they get out of their elements and they forget how to kind of like live, like function. But I've had some doozies as far as, travel delays and all that stuff. But I can't think of any one great thing that leaps out right now.
Well, you just gave us a phenomenal drop, so the question was worth it. We appreciate that, Joe. Let's get to this Beaver baseball team, man. This is what, year 3 on the beat for you now?
No,
Has it been longer than that?
Yeah.
Has it really?
So I
COVID warped my mind. I don't know what year it is anymore.
Kids, old man, you know, your brain, you lose. It's like traveling, it just goes away from you. No, I stopped covering the Blazers in the bubble. So the last thing it was right before the bubble, and then when the bubble happened, I started doing it, and the following year I wrote a feature on Mitch Canham taking over, and then the following year started doing OSU baseball.
Well, it feels like this program has been so good for so long. They are just a reload every year, and here they go in again another season where it's like looking at preseason polls. Hey, look at that. They're a top 10 ranked team in the country. Now, I know the weekend wasn't great. What have we made of it started great and it didn't end great. What do we make of Oregon State early on here in the season and the way the team looks this year?
The team looks really good. They did have a rough weekend. Their bullpen kind of betrayed them a little bit, and they didn't hit as well as you might expect. And that'll happen. I think it's magnified a little bit when it's early in the season and it's at a high profile tournament. A loss to Oklahoma, which is now a top 25 team, no big deal. The following, the next day losing to Minnesota was not what you would want to see. But, having beat the then number 2 Virginia pretty handily on that Friday kind of balances that out. So it's a very deep team on both in the pitching staff and on offense. The lineup is loaded. They have, pitching-wise, they have 12 guys who hit 94 or higher on the radar gun, which is just crazy for a college team, especially for Oregon State. And there's multiple 5 guys who are on the MLB.com top 100 draft list, and that's just draft eligible players. There are many younger guys who are going to get drafted and go on to play professional baseball. It really is one of their better, deepest teams that they've had in a while. And, I think it's the best collection of arms and one of the best lineups that they've had definitely in Mitch Canham's era.
Well, you raised some interesting points in your article as they get ready for a tournament against the Baylors and the Auburns and the likes of which they play in sunny environments tomorrow. But I went through the article, and it's interesting because they dropped those 2 games to Oklahoma and Minnesota, and you highlight some bullpen issues, a couple fielding issues that they ended up having in some of those moments. I think it's a little too early maybe to say, like, we're worried here. So I kind of want to ask more, I guess, a coach question. Mitch Canham, who I don't know how or why, maybe it's seeing 3 national championships from a different coach. There seems to warp some of expectation or thought that they're not quite living up to this reputation. I'm curious, what is a Mitch Canham expectation this year? Another year at the helm, a former player who has had success with this program leading it, as you mentioned, a very talented group. What is an expectation, or should be the expectation, for Mitch Canham this year?
Well, I think all fans would say they need to go to Omaha, and I think all the players say that they expect to go to Omaha. Now, that's easier said than done. As we all know with baseball, it's as much as any sport, maybe the NCAA tournament in college basketball, has this element, but one team gets hot in one game or one weekend, and they can quite literally beat anybody. So, to say that the expectation to go to Omaha, I think that's the internal expectations. I wouldn't say it's unrealistic with the type of talent they have. They certainly have the talent to go there. But I think you've got to at least get to a super regional. And I think, he's done that twice in his first 5 years. There is a hell of a lot of programs that would like that kind of success. Pat Casey, one of the best coaches certainly in state history and in college baseball history, he went 7 times in 40 years? I mean, and that's a ton, and so 20, I want to say they went 7 times. I'm pretty sure that's a fact.
Yeah.
And so, that's really good odds for college baseball, but when you look at the the percentage of it, it's not that great year to year. So, and like you said, the foundation he set, that's the expectation is to get to Omaha. But my own personal expectation, I think the team is talented enough. I think they very likely will get to Omaha, but you know how it goes. You hit the wrong team at the wrong time. You end up going to LSU one year. They went, it's hard to win there. Last year they ran into a really hot Kentucky team that went to Omaha. And I want to say 4 years ago, they lost to Auburn by 1 run in game 3 of a series that would have got them to Omaha. So they've been very close. But just not quite there.
Yeah, we're talking with Joe Freeman covering the Beavs for the Oregonian and Oregon Live. You can go follow him on Twitter at Blazer Freeman. He has gifted us this gem.
It's so deep. It's so long.
I mean, it's just perfect. Just perfect. Thank you, Joe,
You're welcome.
for that. Yeah,
you're welcome. I aim to deliver.
Only Florida could give us that.
Only Florida could give us that. I am curious, Joe. I mean, we had you on a lot last year, especially at the end of the year, and kind of, following how this whole off season was going to look and the transition of conference to independent and how many players are going to stick. And I remember you had some great reporting from, inside the locker room, and a lot of the guys were going to remain and they weren't going to transfer. And we weren't going to see the exodus that was going to happen to some of the other Oregon State teams to happen to the baseball team. And it was, I think, a welcome surprise for Beaver fans to see that come to fruition. Just what do you make of how they've handled the offseason and an independent schedule now, losing some of that stuff that they were familiar with?
Well, I have to, from an unbiased perspective, quote unquote outsider, insider, whatever you want to call me with the program, I think it's pretty impressive what Mitch Canham and his staff have been able to do. I mean, you look at women's basketball and you look at football and you look on down the line, and there was mass exodus of players in so many sports that just decimated those programs in so many ways. And they didn't just keep it going. They kept everybody intact. And then they added multiple guys who very likely would have been very high draft picks. Their Saturday starter, who most think should be their Friday starter, is a freshman named Dax Whitney, who throws 98, and is just insane. He was a potential first-round draft pick, and they got him on campus. There was other guys that we haven't seen yet who are also very high-level prospects who ended up on campus. And then on top of it all, they not only didn't lose guys to the portal, they added perhaps the most coveted prospect in the portal in shortstop Iva Arquette, who has just been ridiculous so far this year, is a lock to be a top 10 or 15 pick and maybe another number 1 overall pick. And so it's hard to imagine, with everything that they had to deal with, having, a better offseason than they did. The independent schedule will be interesting to see how it goes, the rest of this season. They put themselves in position to have a high enough RPI where if they do what they think they can do, they would be able to host a regional and maybe a super regional. but losing games against Minnesota on a neutral site doesn't help that. So that is the one big thing that we'll have to wait and see, because you always had that Pac-12 schedule to fall back on.
Yeah.
Pac-12 was one of the best baseball conferences, historically ever. And so, they have a very challenging schedule as best as they could do. But when you get into the conference season, some conferences don't have bye weekends because they have so many teams. And then the ones that do have bye weekends, some of those coaches are like, well, I don't want to play a top 10 team in the country. It's going to hurt my own chances. And so it was a very challenging, sort of stressful thing for Mitch to put that schedule together in the way he did. And he did a pretty good job. Did I answer your question? I rambled there.
Yeah, you did.
No,
I
think
that was
you
really
did.
good.
Joe, I don't know if I'm asking you something maybe you're not as aware of, but being down there and being around it, I can't begin to understand NIL with baseball. NIL in football, it seems pretty cut and clear and open, and it's like this guy's got this amount of money in this deal. Basketball, hey, there's a Washington Husky, it's $2.3 million. What is the NIL world impacting in baseball, and how is Oregon State's NIL for their baseball program maybe helping or not helping, or kind of middle of the road? Like, what is their NIL collective with baseball?
Their NIL is good enough. I think it's going to need to get better as this thing and this experiment, or whatever you want to call it, the new era, progresses. They do, have stuff to give players, but let's be honest, at, most schools and most conferences, every school, it's football that drives everything, and it trickles down from there. And, to answer your question, where we're seeing it have the most impact in baseball is in the SEC for obvious reasons, because it's the trickle-down effect. They, for the longest time and moving forward with the Big Ten, are getting the most football money, and that trickles down to the rest of the sports. And so you're seeing facilities in baseball in the SEC get insane. It looks like minor league baseball programs are better. And then you're seeing the money go to the players. There have been Oregon State players that have been offered, NIL deals that haven't chased them. Much more lucrative NIL, 6 figures and up deals from SEC programs. And I think right now, you have the culture, you have the people in that coaching staff and players that have been a part of the program. They see how it'll benefit them. And a guy like Gavin Turley says, hey, that's me wasting money if I chase that right now, because this is going to help me down the road get those, get that draft stock, get that professional contract, get that second contract. So right now it's not worth it to chase that 6-figure deal. But he's been in the program for 2 years. He's the right kind of guy. 5-6 years from now, is it still going to be the same, or are players going to be more inclined to chase that, lucrative SEC deal, because they are tossing around big money in those SEC teams. And so right now it's working. I'll be interested to see how it progresses. And I will say that one thing, and I've talked to Mitch and his coaches many times about this. They're big proponents, as all professional college and every other programs are, is the culture, the big culture word. But they kind of chase certain guys like Dax Whitney, who doesn't want that $1 million offer right now. He wants to get better, have a college experience, and get paid later. And he's a certain kind of guy that wants to invest in himself by getting better and being around a program that's going to foster growth in him. And so they are chasing that kind of guy. I mean, Trent Caraway, their starting third baseman, is a guy who passed up $1 million to come. Gavin Turley was a guy who did the same. So you're looking at 3 drafts in a row where they had guys who potentially would have been top 2-3 round picks come to school instead. And so as long as they get that same kind of guy who's got that same kind of mentality, they'll be okay. But I think NIL is only going to increase the lure and the amounts as things go along. Now, all that said, we don't know how the House settlement's going to unfold and how that's going to impact all this. So, we talk now like we know what the hell we're talking about, and we don't, because it changes every friggin' year, man. My team went 13-0 in the regular season, got snubbed, and then they friggin' went 2-10. What are you talking about? So It's the most ridiculous thing in college football history. And I honestly don't think it's going to be that irregular moving forward. I think we're going to see teams have these big years and fall back because you kind of can spend money and build it up, and then, you lose a bunch of guys. So I talk now like I know what I'm saying, but it could very well change this year.
It wasn't a money issue in Tallahassee. You should have eaten the dog crap. I mean, if you eat the dog crap, you don't get cursed the way that you do.
This is true. They should have eaten the poop. Shouldn't eat the poop, Joe.
No one's going to do that.
Last one for you, and then we'll let you go because we're against it. There was a report out of the NFL Combine that Ian Rappaport and Jordan Schultz nearly got into fisticuffs at a Starbucks over beefing. A couple of NFL insiders. So last one for you. Has Joe Freeman ever wanted to challenge another media member to a fight?
Or vice versa. Yeah.
Well, there was an incident. It was a heated incident at Summer League a few years ago. Involved me and another reporter, and I'm not gonna elaborate on any more than that. But it was not my finest moment, and everything's fine. Everything was fine. It all worked out. It was just one of those deals. But no, I've never come close to fisticuffs. It was a verbal deal. It was me and Jason Quick. No, I'm kidding.
Okay.
You guys know we're tight.
Can you give us like a name rhymes like?
Well, what's the
sounds
origin
like?
of it? Why was there almost a brouhaha? What happened?
Well, there was an interview session in which no one was doing anything but me, and it was very early in the Twitter social media thing, and I'm doing the job. And everyone is standing around holding a microphone and tweeting out, live all of the stuff that we're getting. And, in hindsight, it's just part of the transition from, the old world to the new world. And I was annoyed. And so I let people hear about it. It was not my finest moment, but also it wasn't that big of a deal. It was fine the next day.
I love it,
I've
man.
seen worse.
Yeah, that's true.
It's so deep. It's so long.
Blazer Freeman on Twitter. Go give him a follow. Joe Freeman. He does a great job covering Oregon State baseball. He is one of our favorites. Oregonian, Oregon Live. Find all of his great work there. Joe, thank you for getting up with us. Thank you for the insight. Hopefully the FSU fan eats the dog poop soon, and let's catch up soon.
All right, guys. I will talk to you soon. It's always a pleasure.
There you go, Joe Freeman. Good stuff from him, as always, on Beaver Baseball. And the Daily Ticker brought to you by Pelican Brewing. 4 locations along the Oregon coast. Fly over to a Pelican location. Enjoy epic views, local brews all year long. Pelican Brewing looks forward to seeing you at the coast. Look at us with a couple of baseball powerhouses in this state, huh? 2 baseball power, a couple of national title contenders hanging out in this area.